Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 6th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory, upon which we gather with gratitude. Start off with our consent agenda. The consent agenda today, minutes of the public hearing held January 16th, the minutes of the council public meeting held January 16th, 2023, and the approval of the council meeting agenda. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that I assume you all have the amended agenda in front of you? Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation? The consent agenda, including the following recommendations, be approved. That the minutes of the public hearing held January 16th, 2023 be adopted, that the minutes of the council meeting held January 16th, 2023 be adopted, that the February 6th, 2023 council meeting agenda be approved. I have a mover and seconder for this. Councillor Beil, seconded by Councillor Martin. Are there any errors or omissions or discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimous. Thank you very much. I must say this time, it's nice to have you back in person, Councillor Fraz. It's so much easier than dealing with the Zoom and that little bit of a time delay we had. So welcome back. So today we have presentations. We have one presentation today from MacDonald Gray Consultants regarding a zoning amendment application at 1170 Resort Drive. Be a presentation by Nigel Gray, anyways, of MacDonald Gray Consultants regarding the zoning amendment application at 1170 Resort Drive, provided in accordance with policy number 4.31, in which an applicant shall present their proposal to the committee of the whole or council in an open meeting assembled. Mr. Gray, welcome. You have 10 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
You're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to introduce this project to you today. I will be very brief. So I'm here today. Sorry, my name is Nigel Gray. I'm a planner with MacDonald Gray Consultants. My partner, Karen MacDonald, is with me here today in the front row. We have an office in Saint Prairie, just outside of the city of Parksville. So we are local consultants. The zoning amendment application I'm here to talk about today is 1170 Resort Drive. It's a nice day to be talking about a resort project on the worst day of the year. So I'll try and keep it short and light. In terms of this rezoning, the property is currently split zoned. And so the idea here today is to globally rezone the property to tourist commercial as the other half is. And I'll show you how that appears on the map here in a second. So this is the property. The red thick line is the Island Highway. And you can see Tinamero Grotto Spa and Ocean Sands Resort and Sunrise Ridge. So this property is right in the heart of the resort area with Resort Way and Resort Drive bisecting the three portions. Current zoning as it sits right now is tourist commercial on the east side across Resort Drive. And there's kind of a holdover placeholder zone in place called agricultural A1 right now. Obviously, the property is not agricultural. The property to the south was recently rezoned from the same A1 zone to a tourist commercial mix. In the current official community plan, the property is designated as resort lands, and kind of the three big points in there is that it's primarily intended to be tourist accommodation with some complementary commercial and generally with densities not to exceed 30 units per hectare. And this is just the mapping of that in the OCP. So you can see it's all within that olive drab color. So this is all intended to be resort lands, and it's kind of the logical evolution of that area. Any of you who've seen me present before know I'm always very careful to tell you that the images we're going to show you today may not necessarily be the end product. Council will get another kick at that can when it comes through for development permit at a later date. But right now we do these proofs of concept to show that what we intend, the program intended, the land use can fit on the property, and it can be accommodated. So this proof of concept is essentially a resort commercial development. The architects have done a great job of putting together a proof of concept package with our team of engineers and other consultants. The drawing package also illustrates, we're kind of looking forward to your development permit guidelines. So there's quite a bit of tree buffering and other things that are required within those guidelines. And so that's also illustrated on this proof of concept this morning. Again, the program is resort commercial with a restaurant piece towards the Island Highway, a hotel, and a spa and wellness center located closer to Resort Drive. The hotel right now is shown at 38 rooms, which is equal to 38 units per hectare. So if you add in the balance of the site plan, you can see that there is significant tree buffering along the Island Highway. So this 20-meter, 60+ feet tree buffer is required along that frontage. And in the case of this property, there are actually still trees on it. So that buffer actually means something. The secondary kind of bigger buffer is on Resort Drive, and that's a 10-meter buffer along Resort Drive. So you can see how the intent in working with the architects was to nestle this project into the back of the site and kind of preserve that entry feeling that you get when you come onto Resort Way from the Island Highway. And just to illustrate that more clearly, JM Architecture from Surrey has done an excellent job of kind of meeting the intent of the resort area development permit guidelines and illustrating how that would look from a bird's eye. So this is basically hovering above Resort Way. And you can see the restaurant building here, the main hotel, and spa and wellness center towards Resort Drive. This is just another bird's eye view, and this would be hovering above the Resort Way, Resort Drive intersection looking into the site. You can see the architect is really keen on having this kind of grand sloped roof form, which is more of that lodge feeling, more of the original intent of the resort area guidelines. This is at ground level, so there's a human scale view. So if you're in your car pulling onto Resort Way, your only real viewscapes into our site are through the two driveways. This is the one on Resort Way. And the second is from the one closer to the intersection of Resort Drive and Resort Way. So you can see that the site will be pretty well screened for most of its frontage. And I have to say right off the kick that these trees are probably 3 times as tall as they're shown in this illustration. So what's the ask? The requested bylaw amendment today is just to apply the CS2 tourist commercial zoning district globally to the property. So to apply it to that piece that's west of Resort Drive. In addition to that, the architect felt strongly that that roof form met the guidelines more appropriately. And so we are asking for a maximum of 3 stories from finished grade with a maximum height of 14 meters, which would allow us to have that full 12-12 pitch on the roof. And that is just citing kind of the guidelines that are in your development permit areas. The sloped roofs and West Coast contemporary architectural style. Could we do it with a flatter roof? Yes. So the intent is that it be 3 stories, but the roof form is why we're asking for the variance. Community benefit, as I alluded to earlier, this is the community need as expressed in your current OCP. And it also represents the continued evolution of your resort area. So this is kind of one of the last pieces of that resort fabric in the city of Parksville. So might be time to expand that. In terms of financial contribution, we don't typically do this on a tourist accommodation hotel project, but the owner is willing to do essentially $1,000 per unit of hotel, which would be part of the uplift value. So it'd be $38,000. The intent was to go towards the fire department. However, that decision is entirely up to council. And I said I would keep it brief, so we could leave it open to questions. Thanks.
Thank you for your brief and very concise presentation as always, Mr. Gray. I just had a couple of questions I'll open up for council as well. Number one, I appreciate that this is just a concept drawings and so forth. I do very much appreciate your roof styling, and I understand the angled roofs anyways as being very attractive in this area, especially with the amount of trees that you've noticed and are recognizing as a valuable piece of this piece of property. So I do appreciate that very much right up front. The I also appreciate the offer of the amenity contribution from the developer at this particular time. And we will consider that at the appropriate time as well. The only question I have, so to speak, at this point, you have very little frontage on 19A highway. I think if I looked on the plans, it's approximately 14 meters. Anyways, what I was wondering is you show wraparound sidewalk on the portion around Resort Drive and Swan Road. I'm wondering if you would also consider putting in a sidewalk along 19A and that 14-meter stretch. A previous application adjacent to this property anyways, I remember being a council with the previous council, and we asked the same thing of that so that it actually had sidewalk safe pedestrian egress along 19A, which would align us up with the neighboring property. So I was just wondering if you could actually consider that as being possible. It's not a very big stretch of highway or sidewalk, but it would be much appreciated because it gives a safe access all the way to Arbutus Road there. And for your tourists staying at the resort and so forth would be able to access services at the hopefully to be rebuilt Heritage Mall next door there. So with whatever that's going to offer at that point, but it's just a thought I had to bring up early in the stage.
So the quick answer is I was the one who worked on that project. And so yes, we'd like to see that extend out. And I think that's a fair ask and a rational ask on the part of the city. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. The site to the south is being redesigned right now and will be coming back for development permit. And I believe that there's a sidewalk going along the entire frontage now. So that would be additive to what we're talking about now.
Thanks for that information, Mr. Gray. Council open for questions. Councillor Martin.
Will the hydro lines be put down underground?
No.
So they're going to be, they'll still be there. The ones that I was looking, there's a whole line of them. So the trees will be left then.
Through the mayor, sorry.
Yeah, through the mayor, sorry.
What trees are left adjacent to the hydro lines will be left there. The building also has a 3-meter setback from the edge of the lines as well. So the building will be offset. Keeping in mind that on the other side of that property line, there is a 4-story building going in. So you won't actually be able to see this site from the highway.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gray. Grenz, sorry. Mr. Gray.
Through the mayor to Mr. Gray. So I'd like to thank you for the presentation today, and this looks like a very exciting final building block in this area, or maybe not final, but one of the final ones for sure. I'm wondering if there's any consideration given to, as we try to move away from more pavement towards doing underground parking, whether that would be something that could be considered as part of the project.
We would typically consider it where we're constrained on the site. In this case, there are no site constraints that would lead to that. So in terms of convenience, the surface parking does make sense in this case. There are other methods of achieving the pervious surfacing you're talking about. You don't see it too much around here in Parksville, and I would encourage the city to push that more. I'm looking at one of the councillors who we work on some stormwater projects with, but no, this one, it's only 38 units, so going underground really doesn't make sense from a cost perspective at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to Mr. Gray. I would like to thank you for bringing this forward. When I first saw the site identified, my initial thought was, oh, that's a spot where we actually have trees along there. So I was very pleased when I looked at it further. As a runner, we run by there regularly, so I know that particular spot quite well. It looks quite promising. There's no mention in this presentation about what the plan is for that little wedge shaped, if you like, across the road there. That's one question I have. If there is anything particular planned there, I envision maybe some signage, but I don't really know how large it is. And another question I have though is how in a way, how real is this? And the reason I ask is that I have seen over time that projects come forward, proposals come forward, they look fantastic. I'm thinking about that very large piece of property immediately beside this, and something very interesting was put forward, but nothing has occurred. So I'm just wondering, and maybe it's impossible to answer that question, but I am curious to know if, in your opinion, is this likely to come to fruition, as well as what's the plan for that little wedge-shaped across road?
Through the mayor. Sure. As you know, things don't always turn out the way we intend. I'm just the planner. So the properties can be sold in between, and new owners have new ideas, and that's just kind of a fact of the development cycle. In this case, the developer is a large scale resort developer, and the intent, as far as I am aware, is to proceed directly to development permit on not just the piece we're talking about now, but the balance of the property to do an entire resort project. So what I understand, my marching orders is this passes rezoning, comes back as a full DP application for the full resort in an entire package. Now, if we have a terminal recession in the next 2 years, that may not happen, and I can't predict what would happen beyond that. So yeah, it is a fair question. Oh, sorry, the wedge shape. Yeah, I mean, there is no plan beyond signage for that little wedge shape. But something to think about.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. Through the mayor to Mr. Gray. Thank you very much for the presentation. What are some of the options for permeability of that paved section? Thank you.
Sure. So there's paving. If you don't know me or our firm, we're kind of hot on the top of integrated stormwater management. So there's a bunch of different ways of mitigating that impervious surface. You can either make the surface pervious, or mitigate it in something like a rain garden or an infiltration facility or something like that. What we typically recommend and have done in other jurisdictions is you have essentially a hardened paved drive aisle, and the stalls themselves become that porous, either unit paving, the grass stall stuff doesn't really work very well, or something else that's comparable. And there are a number of products. In the case of the resort area and things we've done in Ucluelet, is actually to do essentially a plastic cell that has gravel. So it's a gravel surface. So you basically have all your parking be that pervious gravel, hardened gravel surface. And then at your entryways, you do the concrete and all that. So you're not tracking gravel all over the place, as it is a resort, right?
Thank you. Councillor Gaur.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the mayor to Mr. Gray. Most of my questions that I had, the council has already asked, so I thank them for that. One question I do have is, in our community, we have housing problem, as you probably know. I don't know, within this project and the zoning, would it be possible to have some housing for the staff that would be working at this? If you could answer that, please.
Through the mayor, I believe that would, and to staff, I believe that would require an OCP amendment, which we're not super keen on doing because it's a more complex process and suggests that we're not following the community vision. The site to the south will be predominantly a housing development. It's not affordable housing, it's market housing. I'm not sure if this is the site for that. And I guess to that end, it may behoove council to take the financial contribution and contribute to another affordable housing project somewhere else. I'm going to go back a bit just in time, if I may, Mr. Mayor. When we came for the 1180 Resort Drive project, which is to the south, there was an offer put forward to all of the resort operators to build in an employee housing on that site, and there was no interest at that time.
Hearing no further, I'll just one more question, Mr. Gray. Are you suggesting that the owner of this property is the same one as adjacent to the property, or they're
No.
not?
No.
So, okay, they're just,
And the property to the south has new ownership from the original
right,
developer.
but you're just referring to the fact that a previous offer
Yeah.
was made to the resort owner.
During the rezoning
ownership.
of that time,
Right.
the idea of affordable employee housing came up, and so it was broached, and there was no interest.
Fair enough, yes, I understand there's been another ownership change of the property adjacent to this property. in
Also
question.
recognizing that was some time ago. That was back in 2017, I believe.
Right, okay, thank you so much. If there are no further questions, I would like to thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Gray.
Thank you.
And we appreciate it as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
As today we have another delegation speaking us today is from the Broombusters Invasive Plant Society. Introduction and thank you. Presentation by Joanne Sales of Broombusters Invasive Plant Society to introduce the society to council and thank the city for its support. And just want to welcome back Parksville's very favorite Broombuster. You are top on our list. You know, yeah. Thank you, Joanne.
Oh, that red light, okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mayor O'Brien and council members. Broombusters it's been 15 years since we've been coming here, so glad to be here again to speak to you. We have a new. Okay, sorry. Technologically, whatever. How am I moving this forward? Okay, and how do I move it forward? Okay, Qualicum Beach will be presenting a resolution at ABICC in April, and it's all about Scotch broom. Okay, and here is why. The resolution is not really finished, so don't bother to read it right now. As soon as it's finished this week, I will send a copy to everyone. Okay, Scotch broom has been moving around, spreading scot-free basically for 170 years. It's time for a change before this happens. These are photos from New Zealand taken by local people that were there. Scotch broom prevents forest regrowth. Now, New Zealand didn't know better. The forests were cut down and Scotch broom and gorse moved in, and this is what happened. Now, New Zealand enforces strict bylaws, and our hope is on Vancouver Island, couldn't we do this before we ruin our land? So here's the problems with Scotch broom. I'll go through them briefly because I think you know them. Scotch broom grows huge quickly. And if you look at these pictures, it is a woody weed. It is not a tree. It can grow 2 feet in a single year. It presents an extreme fire danger. According to Terry Peters, the fire chief in emergency services in Powell River, Scotch broom is a volatile flash fuel. It will increase a wildfire's fuel load, escalate the fire's intensity, compromise fire situations, and make fires more difficult to fight. And in this photo, you can see how small the fire truck and the man are off in the side there. Okay, why is it so flammable? It's because it has naturally occurring dry branches and high oil content. The pictures here that you see, and these are all local pictures, this is broom that has not been cut. This is live broom during a dry summer. And as you know, we're going to be having longer, drier summers in our future. So you can see how flammable it is. Another problem we have is Scotch broom on transmission lines. Okay, the picture on the left was taken very locally in our area. Okay, BC Hydro does not control the spread of broom under transmission lines because there is no pressure from governing entities. Okay, now what's the problem with allowing the broom to spread? Power loss and fire could spread along the transmission lines easily across the island. The carries seed to previously broom-free areas, and it blocks escape routes. And this is particularly a concern. This was pictures taken last year around the Dunsmuir, and the people that live there, they have no other way to get out, the trucks cannot travel through that area. So these were photos of the broom on a wet spring 2022, but you can imagine what it would look like during a dry summer. Another problem is that lost forest and lost timber sales. Scotch broom moves from transmission lines into forests. And these were very local pictures taken from the air. And you can see that the broom has moved from the transmission lines into the forest that's trying to grow. 2014, 47 million lost timber sales in Oregon, and 142.7 million lost forecast in Washington in 2017. I don't have any figures for BC, but those are serious. Broom negatively impacts agriculture and food security. It's toxic to grazing animals and wildlife. They can't eat it, and it replaces the grass that they need to eat. Releases toxins, changes soil chemistry so that the soil is no longer so hospitable to native plants. It's called the scourge of pasture land. And when broom takes over farms, it's hard to reclaim. And that's because a single plant produces 18,000 seeds, which are viable in the soil for 30 plus years. This was a farm in Parksville, and the one on the right is a farm in Combs. We're very concerned about biodiversity. It's the big word right now. But according to a study by for the Invasive Species Council of BC, Scotch broom is the top offender about biodiversity. Scotch broom is the invasive species causing the greatest harm to species at risk in BC. And that's the top of the chart there. All of those are invasive species, animals and plants that cause a problem for biodiversity. And Scotch broom is by far the worst offender. I don't need to show you pictures of broom on the highways, but the one on the top right, that's right next to Bucker Fields. And I'm sure you all saw when the forests were cut down there. And I think it was probably maybe 2010 or something. But anyway, the broom moved in and the trees never regrew. Recently it was cut, but during that at least a decade, no trees were recovered there. So when land is cleared of forest and neglected, broom quickly moves in and becomes established. You all know about this piece of land. It's Alberni Highway and Highway 19. So the picture on the left was spring 2020. I took a photo of the land that was bare at that time. This is what it looked like exactly 2 years later, spring of 2022, and broom had already moved in and taken over. And according to Terry Peters, the fire chief again, broom is a significant threat as a fire hazard for urban interface fires within our region. So having areas covered with broom like that near our cities is very dangerous. Private property problems. Land is too often cleared for development or for farming, but then the land is left neglected. So we see the same place, same photos on the left there. Spring Hill Road is another area close by to Parksville. And now we have a new cleared area at Chattel and K Road, which is Parksville exit south. And with no bylaws, this will be the next broom field bordering Parksville. There's broom right in the center of it and all around it. So why is nothing being done about Scotch broom? And why is it classified only as a weed of concern with the BC Weed Board? I believe it's because Scotch broom is mostly on Vancouver Island. So it's up to the governing bodies of Vancouver Island to speak out. So we can stop it now, but soon it will be too late. So we ask Parksville's support of the resolution about Scotch broom at ABICC. So the good news about Broombusters, okay, we're doing well within the municipalities, and we asked for Parksville's support again this year because the Parksville volunteers are very enthusiastic. 2022, 667 Broombuster volunteers cut broom, over 6,000 hours now on Vancouver Island and the Lower Mainland, and 119 people of Oceanside cut broom for 1,600 hours. So there are now Broombuster groups from Souk to Alert Bay, from Ucluelet to Coquitlam, over 17 local governments. These are all pictures from Parksville, and you might recognize the 10-year anniversary that we had. Parksville, or Broombusters loves Parksville. So Parksville has great volunteers, but we need help of local governments, and we need Parksville's help. And if our children had a voice, they would tell us there's no greater need than to protect the land for our future. So this is the reason why we take this so seriously, is a year lost with invasive species is land lost, and it's hard to recover it. So we cut broom in bloom, and we appreciate the support of Parksville for the sake of farms, for us and the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanne. And you made reference to you putting a resolution together for AVICC. Are you aware that there's a deadline coming up really quick
Yes,
for
yeah.
AVICC? So
Yeah.
are you okay with that? So are you submitting it yourself?
One of the council members in Qualicum Beach is submitting it. So they're giving final approval on Wednesday, submitted on Thursday.
That's fine. I was just willing to offer as well anyways, if you needed to get it in on time anyways. So
Well, thank you.
yeah,
Thank
okay. Thank you, Joanne. Any questions from council, please? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Through yourself, Joanne, thank you for all the work that you and the teams do. Is there a mechanical means that, I'm not a gardener myself, but is there a mechanical means to clear out, in mass quantities of broom? It just seems like, looking at your pictures that, doing it by hand with volunteers, kind of, I don't mean to, be not optimistic or pessimistic about it, but it seems like it's kind of a losing battle. But without spraying, is there another way that the province could fund mechanically removing these? Thank you.
The best thing to do is prevent, which we all know, is don't let the broom get into areas where it will take over and cover large acreage. But when you do have large acreage like that, one thing that Qualicum Beach used on their landfill, which was 10 acres, was they used a flail mower. Because the reason why we cut broom is because it cuts it at ground level, then the plant doesn't resprout. But another way is to mangle the roots so that then when you have the heat of summer, it's another way that it kills the plant. So a flat area like the one, on Alberni Highway could be cut with a flail mower. And another solution would be whenever a development or something is planned, or a private landowner is planning to do something that so many other areas in the world, they will say you cannot allow invasive plants to go into that clear area. And those are the kind of bylaws that we need. But poison doesn't really work long-term. The roots regrow. Flail mowers work. I think someday we might have robots that will come along and cut lower enough. But right now, we're just doing the best we can with our method.
Thank you. Councillor Beil.
Thank you, and through the chair to Ms. Sales. First of all, I'd just like to thank you very, very much for your presentation. And something I noted is that you did refer to Parksville's support, and I'm just wondering what tangible ways does Parksville support the efforts of Broombusters? And I really do appreciate the work that the group does. And as you know, I have come out and assisted myself,
Yes.
although I did not do as many hours last year as I'd hoped. But how does Parksville support the efforts? And is there something that we should be doing ongoing with this regard?
So the pattern that started up first in Qualicum Beach and then in Parksville, and Parksville jumped right on it, is that the volunteers would cut the broom, and then Public Works or Parks Department has done in different cities, would then remove the cut broom from the side of the road. So that's the partnership that's working so well within the municipalities. But within the resolution that's being proposed is asking that municipalities control the broom within, but also nearby their municipalities for the safety of the residents. And so that might be something that we don't quite know how it would mean, but it could be that municipalities could request that BC Hydro not have broom growing along the areas that are adjacent, like right next to Parksville, not to allow that because of the fire hazard, et cetera. So there's other ways that municipalities can help, but we're totally grateful that the broom disappears when we cut it.
Thank you. And through to the chair, actually, do we, and perhaps if we have people here from operations and maintenance, and is that, do we need to make a request that continues in the coming year, or is that just considered to be part of what our operations and maintenance staff will ensure takes place again?
I don't believe we have to make any special concession or resolution for that, Councillor Beil. It has been operations has handled it, and I know who's handling it now. is in the audience right now, and he could speak to it if you wish anyways to what they're already doing. But it has been allocated into their work schedule that they allocate so much time per season to pick up all the broom. And I see the Parksville trucks out there waiting for Joanne's crew to finish what they're doing, and I see them out there picking it up, and they have a good relationship, as I understand, with Joanne's team. And I don't think we have to do anything further at this time. That it is just to say, yes, we're prepared to continue offering the same support with that regard. Carry on, Councillor Beil, sure.
Thank you very much. And I do have one further question, permission from the chair.
Absolutely.
And that is to ask if you are making a presentation to the RDN, and particularly if our neighboring, whether it be Director Wallace or Director Salter, you made mention to that very large piece that's, for instance, just outside city limits along the Alberni Highway and the exit there. So I'm just wondering if you making any headway, having contact with the directors of that area and also with the RDN.
I will be doing a presentation to the RDN next week. So we're hoping that the municipalities have actually been great, and there's 14 municipalities that we're working with. And we're hoping that the regional districts will be able to step forward and to do more. They're supportive, but they don't really do anything at this point. We're hoping that they will start to address the issues.
Yes, and to follow up as to Councillor Beil's request, I agree that it's very appropriate that you go through the RDN. But yes, as you like to visit us and we like you visiting us, it's important that you do contact those electoral directors as well. You know, we're surrounded by E, F, and G electoral areas, and it's very important that you make direct contact with those individuals so they can support your requests when it comes to the RDN, so they know you're coming, and so I think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Anyways, because we are literally surrounded by the electoral districts, and they should step up and do their part as well. It's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further question, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joanne, I'm very appreciative of what you do, and I'm wanting to know, how many years does it take for you to actually eradicate this? Because I've had broombusters come to our family property, but we have to do it every year. But how many years before the seeds are gone?
It totally depends on the kind of soil and the ground cover. Like on Memorial Road in Qualicum Beach, we cut it once and it never came back because there was good ground cover. The grass was high. But then on Village Way, I'm speaking of that just because I have the two that I know so clearly. On Village Way, we still have to keep going back and cutting the broom there, even though it's been 17 years, because the soil there is very bad. So the grasses don't grow, and you don't have salal and other ground cover. So it really depends on what's growing there. And of course, trees are the best thing. It's like, just protect the tree cover, and then you're not going to have broom problems. You'll have other invasive plants, but you won't have Scotch broom. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a more specific answer.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, thank you once again for your presentation, Joanne, and good luck with your upcoming season. Broom in bloom is going to happen just like Christmas does every year. So yeah, good luck out there, and you're doing a great job. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you, council members.
Yes, and our next delegation is from the Parksville Beach Festival Society. Good day, Cheryl. Request for variances to special event policy for Rock the Park event. This will be a presentation by Cheryl Dill of the Parksville Beach Festival Society, requesting that the terms and conditions for beer garden events under special events policy number 3.30 be varied to accommodate the Rock the Park Music Festival from August 11th to August 13th, 2023. Welcome, Cheryl, and good to see you again.
It's great to see you all. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. Very pleased to be here. I am Cheryl Dill, and I'm the president of Parksville and District, or sorry, Parksville Beach Festival Society. And I bring greetings as well from Lloyd Derry, who could not be here today. And the two of us were able to collaborate with Lloyd taking the lead on putting this together. So I know that he's watching today from an area outside of this place and wishes everyone well. So yeah, very brief presentation, if I may, and that is that we are very proud to have an operational agreement in place to operate the new Parksville Outdoor Theater. And while we are in a learning year here as a society operating the theater, we're very proud to be able to collaborate with the city staff who have been incredibly supportive to us for this. And we are currently working very hard at getting another season of entertainment together for the Parksville Outdoor Theater. And Lloyd's worked diligently to put a great lineup together for the Rock the Park Music Festival, our second annual festival. And in doing so, had received plenty of requests and has been considering the operation of a beer garden during the Rock the Park Music Festival, which is scheduled between August 11th and 13th for 2023. In doing so and reading our operational agreement that we have in place with the city, we recognize that the alcohol service policy, if the event is not on a long weekend, that it only extends to 2 days. And we scheduled the Rock the Park Music Festival in 2023 on the weekend following the August long weekend, because there's such a broad activity in the park that we didn't want to conflict with other really great events within the park. So we did schedule it for the following weekend, which happens to not be a long weekend. So what we would like to request is that the beer garden service could be made for an exception to extend for 3 days from 2 days to run the same length of time as the festival itself, which is the Friday, August 11th, the Saturday, August 12th, and Sunday, August 13th.
Thank you so much for your presentation. The questions from Council, Councillor Gaur.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the mayor to Ms. Dill. Well, first of all, thank you for your all your efforts and all of the people involved with the Beach Fest. It's iconic for Parksville, and we really appreciate your efforts. My question is, the beer garden, which I saw last year in the alcohol service policy, is there a regulation about the signage where you can put the signage for the beer garden? Because I saw it along the sidewalk and I was told that we are technically not allowed to be putting that signage along the sidewalks.
The beer garden last year, I'm not sure who was operating that. That wasn't part of Parksville Beach Festival. And I believe that that was further down along the boardwalk. So not certain what organizer that was. In terms of our event, we have signage surrounding the fence that we will put up pertaining to the entrance and exit. And we have the entrance and exit sign, or excuse me, operators will be the Macmillan Arts Center team who operate the gate from ticket sales to be able to pick up your wristband in advance to allow sales of tickets related to the beer garden. So that'll be regulated, but all of that information will be at the gate. Yeah, and then the beer garden is planned to be inside the gate of Rock the Park, along with additional, what can I say, boundaries around that beer garden to establish that zone clearly within that operational area of the Rock the Park Festival.
Okay. Are there questions? Councillor Wood.
Just a comment through the chair, if I may. Cheryl, thank you very much for all that you and the team do. I think the community park is, as we always say, a jewel in the community, and everything we do there attracts people to Parksville. So thank you very much.
Anybody else? I see a question or a comment from our CAO, Ms. Kaler. If you would like to take the microphone, go ahead.
Thank you. If I may, Mayor, just wanted to clarify that the beer garden that I think has been discussed was not in the park. It was at a campground near the park, and our staff took the signage down. So that was not anything to do with Beach Fest.
Thank you for clarifying that, Ms. Kaler. Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm just wondering if, and thank you, Dill, for the presentation. I'm just wondering if there is a request for a motion at this time, or what are we thinking? Or is this further along? I don't recall, and I wasn't able to bring up on the computer here.
I believe on the agenda. Councillor
Oh,
CAO
thank-
Taylor, yeah.
Thank you.
Our computers are down so we're unable to follow electronically. So we're back to paper. So we don't know what to do again now. So we just can't
No
deal with
problem.
it.
That's why
Thank
we're
you,
here.
CAO. Taylor.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we would be requesting a motion to add the additional day, just because it is not consistent with the policy. So we need council support to do that. So this would be the right time if council is willing to do that.
Sorry, you faded out. This is the right time?
Yes,
Thank you.
so we would get a motion essentially to approve the third day, given that this is not directly consistent with the policy. So the council's motion could simply be just to endorse the request for a 3-day beer garden from August 11th to 13th for Beach Fest.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Beil,
So I would like to make that motion.
thank you so much. And that would be seconded by Councillor Wood.
Although I believe it starts on Friday, but the dates are correct, the 11th to the 13th. Yes.
For clarification purposes, Cheryl would be the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you for the notation for the extension on it. Is there further discussion at this time? Councillor Beil.
Thank you. I was just curious to know what time the festival wraps up on the Sunday.
Absolutely. And I recognize that the document that I sent out had an error on the Sunday time slot. It will start at 12 and end at 7:30 that evening. The final performance begins at around 6 o'clock and ends at 7:30.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Grenz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just a comment through you to council and delegation. I just would like to comment that I appreciate the effort that is going into ensure community safety, because beer gardens maybe have a bit of a reputation in Parksville. And so it's great that you put this for the proponent to address a number of safety concerns to ensure that that is not going to be an issue this year. Thank you.
Absolutely. And through Mayor to Councillor Grenz, I appreciate you raising that. It's a significant issue to be aware of and managed. And as our society directors and our volunteer team that we're putting together to manage that, it is of utmost priority to ensure that that is a success and that it is not a detriment to our park and our community. We are taking this very seriously. We want it to be successful. We want it to be a nice addition to the festival and not something that is deleterious to the event. So it's very, very important to us that we put every effort in to make it successful. Thank you.
No further questions from council. Just a further comment to Cheryl here. It's basically an alcohol permit at this particular time. This is not just a beer garden. Will there be wine served as well? We can get our favorite Chardonnay, not all of us are beer drinkers. So the thing is that it will still be a beer and wine event is basically what it is. It just comes under the beer garden title.
Well, I do appreciate, Mr. Mayor, you bringing that up because I thought, is there another term for this? And I kind of Googled that recently to say beer garden may not be the correct term, but absolutely, we want to also feature some local spirits and brew here as well as wine. There's certainly plenty on Vancouver Island and in BC. So we'd like to have variety to feature some of the great artistry and businesses in our province.
Well, and I agree with that. If we can turn it into, instead of a beer garden, to maybe a community arts and culture event with alcohol, something like that. But it really
Yes.
was what is like, let's catch up to, where we are now, folks, like we can all behave responsibly. And,
Point taken.
with the Beach Fest running it, I'm sure it's going to be run with safety and with in mind in every respect. Another further comment, Councillor Beil.
Thank you. And actually keeping in mind the great progress that's being made with the non-alcoholic beers and other spirits. Hopefully there will be some non-alcoholic offerings as well, because just a chance to sit down and socialize with people is a great thought. Anyway, thank you again.
Understood. Thank you.
Any further questions, council? Called the question. All those in support of the motion? That carries unanimous. Thank you so much, council, and thank you so much, Cheryl, for your presentation again. We'll see you again soon.
With appreciation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on, council, we have our third, and maybe, I don't know, I guess Mr. Bird might say we're saving the best till last. We have our third delegation is Parksville District Chamber of Commerce request for Canada Day funding support by Mr. Kim Burden of the Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce regarding the 2023 Canada Day celebration for a request for funding. Welcome, Mr. Burden.
Thank you very much, and nice to be here, and nice to see that the fun element of Parksville is growing. I'm pleased to see your previous decision. I'm here to talk to you about the Canada Day festivities, which I think marks the opening of the summer and something that the Parksville District Chamber of Commerce has been proud to present, I think, for somewhere in the neighborhood of 20+ years. There was a brief hiatus where the Rotary Club took it on for a little while, but we've moved forward from a parade and fireworks to a parade, a day in the park, fireworks, just making sure that the community has an opportunity to A, celebrate their heritage, and B, entertain our residents and visitors. The day starts off with the Shriners, the famous Shriners breakfast. It's a great event that the Shriners put on an annual basis, get everybody ready to take their spot to watch the Canada Day parade. And then, of course, following that, we move down into the community park for a spectacular day of entertainment. And again, the fireworks display, which I will add, we're exploring at this point some alternatives to fireworks, but still putting on a great display. We haven't made any decisions there yet. We haven't made any decisions about a lot right now, but we're certainly entering into the heavy planning phases. So my purpose in coming here today is to talk to you about numbers. Our budget has grown significantly over the years, and in particular, things like toilets and traffic control have ballooned to a point where we're having some difficulty managing. And as you can see, there's roughly a $10,000 deficit. We're certainly appreciative of the contribution from the city of Parksville. I believe you have a line item in your budget for $10,000, and we're grateful for that. And we are also extremely grateful for the assistance that we get from city staff, both in the park and on the street for Canada Day Parade. But we need some help in both of those areas, and we're hoping that we can increase the current $10,000 donation from the city to this event to something more in the neighborhood of $15,000, and we'll figure out a way to hit our sponsors for the balance. But the traffic control is the biggest piece. It's doubled. We paid, I think, just under $5,000 in 2018, 2019, we paid just over 5,000, and then last year the bill was in excess of $10,000. And it's labor costs, it's requirements, regulations, it's a combination of a number of different elements, but we can't handle it anymore. So that's our request, and I know you're going into your budget deliberations soon, so we wanted to get this in front of you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Kim, for your presentation. Councillor Wood.
Through the chair, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Burden, thank you very much for the presentation. When I was a kid, I used to love fireworks. These days, it seems like there is a bit of a different view. You already touched on a little bit. So I just wanted to mention, be a little bit of a voice for the voices that we do here and via email, that they do have quite a repercussion on animals and pets and even some people. And so that is something to consider moving forward. I think it does seem to be like there's a little bit of a movement moving away from fireworks. And I don't mean to be a killjoy at all. Again, when I was a kid, I used to love them. So I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Yeah, I have 2 dogs. And I walk the beach following Canada Day at low tide and see the impact of the tubes and the bits and pieces that are left over. And we're looking at the possibility of putting on a laser light show instead. I've talked to some folks that provide that service, and we think we can do it for similar money. I'm not going to commit to anything at this point, but we're certainly exploring those options.
Further questions for Mr. Burden? Thank you, Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Burden, for your presentation. And you mentioned certainly the traffic control costs, and I take it those aren't likely to drop. I was just curious if somehow that's going to become less, given that it's pretty much the same route every year, I believe, and also there have been improvements with such things as restricting any sort of parking down in the park and so on. I'm wondering through to, again, the question if a motion needs to be made, or I understand that I wasn't anticipating that, but thinking more that I appreciate you bringing this forward before we go into budget deliberations. And I noticed that our Director of Finance is here, and so is also hearing this request and that we can be looking at that when it comes forward. I know that the parade, you hear it every year that, I sit along the sidelines and there'll be people from someplace, and it's the first time seeing it, and they're absolutely blown away by the quality of the parade here in Little Parksville. So thank you very much for all that you do on this important yearly activity for us.
Thanks, Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Councillor Beil. CAO Kaler has comments regarding whether we need a motion or whether we can wait to budget. Thank you, CAO Kaler.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the council has 2 options immediately. There might be more than that, but essentially we can defer the consideration to the council budget. And that would, staff will make a note of that. Certainly it is a line item already, so it would be an increase that council would need to discuss, or a councillor can raise a motion arising from the delegation and make a decision at this point. Because we have a delegation, you don't need to do a notice of motion in this circumstance. So those are 2 of your immediate options.
Thank you. And before we get into a possible motion here, if I could just have a question or 2 for Mr. Burden. The Canada events where it falls down to the community park. Do you have any anticipation of using the new outdoor performing arts theater?
You betcha.
Thank you very much. That is all the question, except for I would like to echo Councillor Wood's concerns regarding the fireworks, the laser light shows. I've been able to attend one, and where they actually included the LED drones as well, which was just amazing. And with a lot less disturbance to everyone else around. And I would certainly like to see a movement away from the fireworks. As you know, the city of Parksville has a ban on fireworks other than professional services, such as what's been provided by Canada Day and by the end of summer Beach Fest celebrations as well. So I would not have any problem if we move from that. And if you can utilize new technology, I'd be most appreciative, as were many citizens that we receive complaints from after the event. So that would be amazing. Thank you so much for your presentation. Is there any motions on the floor coming up? Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like to make a motion to defer a request for the increase from the city of Parksville to $15,000 to the budget deliberations for this.
That would be seconded by Councillor Gaur. That's probably a very wise move. Is there discussion on this deferment until budget for the ask by the Chamber of Commerce? Is there any further comments or discussion on this, council? Councillor Grenz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe just one quick comment is that I appreciate this motion because I previously stated that I prefer not to vote on delegation funding requests while the delegation is sitting in front of us. I'll thank you, Kim, though. Appreciate it.
Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion on the floor? That is unanimous. Thank you so much, Mr. Burton.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to reports. Mr. Russell, Director of Community Planning and Building, could you please give us a background on the issue regarding the zoning and development amendment application at 1170 Resort Drive to consider a zoning and development bylaw amendment? Mr. Russell.
Certainly, if I may, to the chair and rest of council, for council consideration is a change in zoning to basically normalize the zone on a portion of a property that's divided into 3 sections. In this case, the zone will be changed, or is proposed to be changed from A1 to tourist commercial CS2 on 2 portions of the property that are located between Resort Drive and the Island Highway. The portion of the property to the east of Resort Drive already has tourist commercial CS2 zoning. The proponent, as was demonstrated council earlier, has shown a 38 unit 3-story resort development. This is a conceptual drawing at this point in time. Contribution to the fire department has been offered. And basically there's an opportunity for additional public engagement. I do note that there's a typo in the report. The report should say prior to second reading that the proponent should go ahead with public engagement, and the recommendations are per the agenda, that the report be received, that under the bylaw section, that the bylaw be considered for first reading, and that prior to second reading that the proponent hold a public open house of some kind.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Any questions for Mr. Russell while he's at the table today? Thank you, Mr. Russell. Seeing none, I would like to move. Do I have a mover and seconder for the following recommendation? That the report from the Director of Community Planning and Building dated January 31, 2023, entitled Consideration of an Application for a Zoning and Development Bylaw Amendment at 1170 Resort Drive, file number 3360 PZ NO45 be received. Part 2, that council in accordance with the bylaw section of the council agenda, introduce the proposed zoning and development amendment bylaw 2023 number 2000.144 for consideration of first reading. That part 3, prior to second reading of zoning and development amendment bylaw 2023 number 2000.144, the applicant or owner of 1170 Resort Drive provide an opportunity for public engagement, such as a developer hosted public open house, and provide developer and provide comments received to the Community Planning and Building Department for subsequent introduction to council. Do I have a mover and seconder for the above? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Martin. Comments and discussion, please. Councillor Grenz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one comment through to council and Director of Planning is that I hope that it's possible to work with the developer to take into consideration some of the comments made earlier in this meeting around, in particular, the surface parking and whether ideally underground parking is possible. It's not just about the permeability issue, but also it's more convenient for people parking underground than parking in the elements, but also secondarily, maybe looking at other surfaces that could be used instead. So if it's possible to work with the developer on that, that would be great.
Further questions? Councillor Gaur.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the mayor to the council. This application is quite consistent with the OCP, and I know a portion of the property is already zoned for tourist commercial. So that's why I support moving this application further. Again, I would just reiterate my request to the council that we look into revising our OCP as soon as we can, so we have most up-to-date information on what the people of Parksville want our city to grow. Thank you.
Councillor Beil.
Pardon me. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would just like to add that I really appreciated your request about the sidewalk along 19A, and looking forward that, you know, when that adjacent property is developed, having sidewalk all along there will really improve the pedestrian experience for people who might be walking from Craig Bay to and from Craig Bay area or Arbutus and going along and then going down onto Resort Drive to then carry on towards the city. It just really will be helpful to see that. And also my understanding through to the Director of Planning is that assuming that this goes forward, that the next step would be for the developer to bring forth an actual development permit. And at that time, many of those details can be looked at very, very closely, correct?
That is correct. That's exactly the time when that will be brought forward. And also for the benefit of new council members here, I can advise you that the planner that has made the presentation, Mr. Nigel Gray, anyways, through past developments proposed to council. His past history is excellent, being very cognizant to council's comments and wishes, and is always shown to produce a professional design anyways that tries to take in as many of your comments as possible. The past history records that it has always been well received when the final product is out there. So just to give you further assurance. Councillor Martin.
Through our Mr. Mayor, I've been looking more into the surfaces of pavement, just like you were talking about, Councillor Grenz. And we need to look at this seriously so that we have more porous, with less environmental, you know, the water is shared. I didn't know anything about it. You know, we have pavement all our life, but there's other areas, and I'd like to look at this, not just here, but as a council, when we're looking at different developments to see if that could be done. I can see the main roadway being paved, but the parking areas, not necessarily, they could be a different kind of surface, more porous. So I just wanted to make that point. I've been learning about that. Thank you.
Councillor Gaur.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to thank Mr. Gray for the presentation today. I didn't get a chance. I'm very supportive of local planners who live in our community and care about our community when they're coming up with proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, council? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you for your report, Mr. Russell. Mr. Russell. Director of Community Planning and Building, could you please give us the background on the issue regarding a follow-up report for consideration of a development variance permit at 123 Shelly Road to consider issuance of a development variance permit?
Certainly, if I may, Chair, through yourself and council. This is a follow-up report. Required notice for this variance request has proceeded. The variance, if approved, will allow for relaxation to the combined gross floor area of all accessory buildings from 90 square meters to 113.08 square meters in order to allow for the construction of a new accessory building for a future pool on the property. As of this morning, no correspondence have been received. At this meeting, I would ask the chair to provide an opportunity for anyone who wishes to speak who may be impacted by this application to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Any questions for Mr. Russell before I open the floor to anyone who wishes to speak? None, thank you. If there's anybody present in the audience that wishes to speak regarding this particular development variance, if you could step forward to the microphone, we would be pleased to hear any comments at this time. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this amendment? And for the third time, is there anyone who wishes to come forward? Hearing none, thank you so much. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that point 1, that the report from the Director of Community Planning and Building dated January 27, 2023, entitled Follow-Up Report, Consideration of a Development Variance Permit at 123 Shelly Road, file 3090 PVP 058 be received. Point 2, that upon consideration of public comment received, Development Variance Permit number 23 PVP 058 be issued to the owners of 123 Shelly Road in order to facilitate the construction of an accessory building. I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Grenz moves, seconded by Councillor Wood. Comments, please. Yes, was that a hands up? Okay, no, you're just waving. Nice to see you too, Councillor Grenz. Councillor Beil.
Purely in jest, but I was speaking with a fairly close neighbor of this particular address who thought that it sounds like a wonderful idea, especially if there was at least an annual neighborhood party at their place. So, but purely in jest.
Not sure we'll put that on record, but it's a good ask, and I probably know someone who could make that ask at that neighborhood. Councillor Gaur, you're good? Further comments from council? Moving forward, call the question. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you so much, Mr. Russell. Mr. Doxey, Manager of Infrastructure, could you please give us the background on the issue regarding the Moss Avenue upgrades tender award to award the contracts for street and utility renewal for Moss Avenue? Welcome, Mr. Doxey.
Thank you, Mayor O'Brien. If I may, this project comes back to us from 2019. It was previously designed, intended for construction. At that time, it came in over budget, and there was some discussion. It prompted some discussion around priority sidewalk network priority for the city. And so the project did end up having the sidewalk removed, and it was then redesigned, and it has now been retendered and is ready to go. We're budgeting for our capital projects through a budget envelope process where we have about $4 million to manage the projects within the capital renewal program. This project will take up a considerable portion of it for this year. There is other project work being planned for this year, but this project does fit within the budget envelope and the budget distribution that was proposed for it. Otherwise, the resolutions are per the report. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dox. I'm pleased to see this come forward again. And I'm sure the people on Moss Avenue are pleased to see it coming up again as well. So just quickly, if I say, so this is the major project for City of Parksville for 2023.
It would be, yes.
Yes.
There are several studies that'll be major projects for our department, but they're studies as opposed to capital implemented projects.
Thank you so much for that comment. Comments or questions from council, Councillor Martin.
Through the chair, thank you. Are there bike lanes on these side streets at all allowed or being planned for?
If I may, through Mayor O'Brien, there's a network of bike lanes and bike routes identified and proposed within the Transportation Master Plan. This road is not part of that distribution. There is a small portion at the end of the road where it curves by Stanford. That portion is part of the pedestrian network and will have sidewalk and a crossing over to Stanford, which is an existing part of the network and will be built to continue that on.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Beil.
Thank you, through the mayor to Mr. Doxey. So I take it from what you were saying here, because I'd made a note here, lower cost standard question mark. That was just, going back over it. So is the elimination of the sidewalk basically the result? It doesn't mean that there's somehow a less standard that's applied to doing the work on the street?
If I may, through Mayor O'Brien, no, not exactly. So it's just the removal of the sidewalk from being included within the standard. Is basically, a priority network was established by the previous council, and only sidewalks were identified as priority routes are to be having sidewalk included within the capital program, and it also impacted development files as well. So it was intended to, I think, aim the sidewalks at the perceived intended target areas. So I should also mention there is a transportation master plan on the radar for this year as one of the, it'll be a major study type of project, but that is back on the radar for this year, and certainly good point for public engagement.
We're looking forward to that. Yes. Are you good, Councillor Beil? Follow up?
Yes, and understanding that this is a residential street, it's not a through street, it's not generally used for, it's not a high traffic area. And certainly in many cities where they're talking about complete streets as well, or pedestrian friendly streets, they don't necessarily have sidewalks. So I appreciate that information. So there's no real long-term impact that somehow that this is going to be a problem, or something could be addressed later if it was needed to be addressed?
If I may, through Mayor O'Brien, yes, certainly sidewalk could be added anytime in the future. And that could be arguable, but it could be nicer to have separate sidewalks as opposed to a combined curb assembly with the sidewalk adjacent, but that could be a separate debate, but certainly could be added later.
Councillor Gaur.
Thank you, Mayor, and through the mayor to our manager of infrastructure. And I guess Councillor Beil asked the question about the addition of sidewalk later on. So thanks for answering that. My just one comment is I haven't thoroughly read this proposal, but if I remember, Moss has a median with some trees on it. Would that be retained or added and all along? Like, would there be some changes made to that one?
If I may, again, through Mayor O'Brien, no, the old median with that had trees in it is being removed as part of the project. There's limited space within the right of way to maintain existing services and then install new works and services within the same corridor. And so those are going to end up going away. There are going to be, we'll look at installing street trees where they're physically plausible along the edges of the streets. Keeping in mind, when you have an existing built up area, you have existing utilities, and then you're doubling the utilities in the road for a short period. The constraints and the setback criteria for the trees to utilities and laterals does restrict it somewhat, but we're going to aim to put in street trees.
Thank you. Good. Any further questions from council? So therefore, I'll ask if I have a mover and a seconder for the following recommendations. Point one, that the report from the manager of infrastructure dated January 26, 2023, entitled Moss Avenue Upgrades Tender Award be received. At point two, that staff be authorized to award a construction contract for street and utility renewal for Moss Avenue to Nappet Industries 2006 Limited for $2,888,889 plus GST. Point three, that staff be authorized to award a contract for professional services for construction administration to Coors and Associates Engineering Limited for $199,100 plus GST. And point four, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the subject contracts on behalf of the city. Can I have a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Gaur, seconded by Councillor Beil. Further discussion, please. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you so much, Mr. Doxey. Moving on, we have a report from Mr. Arden, Manager of Operations. Could you please give us a background on the issue regarding award of security guard and patrol service contract, to award the contract for the security guard and patrol services for the city parks and facilities? Mr. Arden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for this opportunity again to come back and present this report. So this is a service provided to the city for a 3-year term with 2 options to renew, 1 year for a 5-year total. But the original contract is for 3 years to provide services to our facilities and our parks to maintain security services around unlocking gates, washroom closures, the patrol here at both PCTC as well as at our operations yard overnight and at Shelly Hall, as well as the staff here during the operating hours that operate inside the facility. So it's to provide an enhanced service to us and our staff in the community in our areas that are open when everybody may not be doing the best things.
Thank you, Mr. Arden. Is there any comments or questions from Mr. Arden? Councillor Martin.
To the mayor, thank you. I appreciate what they do. Is there more, other than this contract? Is there other services that we might need that you feel from our experience in the last, few years, other services that we might need? Besides what these people do? For security?
Through the mayor,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin. We review our services on a regular basis. We also look at in parks and facilities, we look at our infrastructure through a SEPTED principle, which is crime prevention through environmental design. I'm always looking at ways to review, look at options like cameras, cutting back hedges and tree branches to create sight lines from streets that allow for both our patrols that we hire as well as for the police services to have better view and better access and sight lines. So yes, I guess is my answer. We do constantly look at those
Okay,
those
thank you.
different options. Yes.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any further questions for Mr. Arden at this time? Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the following recommendations? Point one, that the report from the manager of operations dated December 20th, 2022, entitled Awarding of Security Guard and Patrol Services be received. Point two, that the contract to provide security guard and patrol services for the city of Parksville be awarded to Footprint Security in the amount of $129,950 per year for 3 years, for a total of $389,850 plus applicable tax, with the options for 2 and 1 year extensions plus applicable taxes. Part 3, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to sign the contract with Footprint Security to provide security services to the city of Parksville for January 1, 2022 to December 31, 2025. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? That would be Councillor Wood moves and Councillor Grenz seconds. Discussion, council. Seeing none, I shall call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed being Adam, Councillor Fraz. Thank you. That carries. Thank you so much, Mr. Arden. Bylaws for first reading. We have first reading today for zoning and development amendment bylaw 2023 number 2000.144 for the max and map and text amendment to tourist commercial CS2 at 1170 Resort Drive. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that the zoning and development amendment bylaw number 2023 number 200.144 be read a first time? A mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Beil, seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Bylaws for a third reading are zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022 number 200.143. The map and text amendment to CD 35 at 285 Pioneer Crescent. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that zoning and development amendment bylaw number 2022 number 200.143 be read a third time? Mover and seconded by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Beil. Any discussion? Councillor Beil.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I understand that the owner of the property is here in the audience today. Welcome. And I'm certainly going to support this. That being said, I really do hope that although the light in the yard was not addressed, was not actually part of this zoning amendment, I really do hope that something can be done to soften the effect of that light and particularly that higher light. I've seen it myself and reflecting off that white garage and spilling over to the neighbors. It's really quite prominent. And anyway, I'm just hopeful that something could be done to soften the effect of the lights. Thank you, but I will be supporting this.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Beil and Councillor Gaur.
Well, thank you, Mayor, through the mayor to the council. I know the owner again acknowledged that he's here. We received a lot of correspondence from people who like you as an individual, your character, your work ethic, and what you've been doing in the community. So I will be supporting this, but I do have one comment, and perhaps our director of planning, if he may be able to answer. We will be rezoning this property, and the value will definitely be higher once it's rezoned. Part of me just feels that the other properties in the area may be like unfavorably affected if one property is upzoned. So if that can be spoken to, I would appreciate some comment on this.
Yes, Mr. Russell, if you could comment on that, please.
If I may, Chair, through Councillor Gaur. It's a slight upzoning, and so it's still primarily a single-family residential property. It has a home-based business designation that's customized a little bit for this particular property. But generally speaking, it's still predominantly a single-family residential property. So its impact is anticipated to be pretty limited. I should also note that it is directly across the street from commercially zoned property. So it's not like it's right in the middle of a purely residential neighborhood.
Thank you. Any further comments? The only comments I'd like to make myself is the fact that the proponent of this amendment and anyways has also reached out to his neighborhood, his neighboring community in a very extensive manner, which I truly appreciate it because it's difficult to get consensus in any neighborhood. And this owner has done that. And I believe that he will continue to try to minimize the impact of those in his neighborhood. I get that from the comments from the people around him, and I would expect nothing less from this owner. So I believe I have good faith that the owner will try to keep his business operation going there with minimal interference with the neighborhood. So I will definitely be supporting this. So if there's no further question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, council. Thank you, sir, for your patience. Moving along, we have two motions provided on the agenda in lieu of notice today. Councillor Martin, could you please introduce your motion?
I have made a small amendment to this motion. So you've got a copy of the amendment. That's not a lot, but thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The deadline for submissions of resolutions for consideration at the annual AVICC convention is February 9th. So this motion has been placed on the agenda with lieu of notice, so council may consider it today. The motion recommends that council of the city of Parksville endorse the following resolution for submission to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities for consideration at the 2023 annual AVICC convention. Whereas many communities are currently using and or reliant on environmentally harmful forms of energy production such as diesel, propane, or coal, which produce comparatively high greenhouse gas levels. And whereas commercial food, agriculture, and other industries such as aquaculture would benefit significantly from the availability of natural gas and other sustainable energy sources as an economical and more environmentally friendly source of energy for local food production. Therefore, be it resolved that the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities request the province of BC partner with Fortis BC and other natural gas and alternative energy providers to create a coordinated infrastructure plan and dedicated subsidies for AVICC members to establish a sufficient supply of alternative clean energy sources for increased commercial agricultural opportunities dedicated to growing food on Vancouver Island. So there's some background information here. Should we do that after the motion?
If you will, we can address your background
Okay.
information under the comments if we could, Councillor Martin. And council, we have three, as Councillor Gaur has pointed out, we have three notices of motion. Councillor Martin's is the first one. I said two, there's actually three that are being heard in lieu of notice type of thing because they're sensitive to time because of the AVICC. And so they're all resolutions regarding the AVICC. So instead of seeking unanimous support, I feel it's opportune at this time. They have actually provided notice, but opportune that we can because there's another one that's come forth that just at the very last minute, a late entry by Councillor Gaur. So that's why we're proceeding along without asking for unanimous support. So hearing that, back to Councillor Martin's motion that she has put forward, I would like to call for a mover and a seconder. A mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
So I
Thank
can
you.
move it.
Seconder by Councillor
Yeah,
Gaur.
thank you.
Now we have discussion. Councillor Martin, if you'd like to provide any further discussion.
So there is some background here written that we got in our thing, but I don't want to take too much time here. I want to explain sort of how I got to this. I want to read this. I've been researching this topic since 2014. A few decades ago, over 45% of our island population was fed from food grown on Vancouver Island. Today, that figure is less than 10%. It has been said we are 4 days away, some say 3, from running out of food on the island. Any one of numerous disasters could create a critical shortage of food on the island in a short period of time. I talked to the owner of Rage's Cucumber in Port Alberni and our then agriculture minister. From what I understand, there are only 2 sustainable businesses on the island growing food in greenhouses. I'm talking about businesses, not markets, businesses. At the time, Rage's Cucumbers had 50 employees and many customers on the island. He told me when they started their business in the 80s, there was 23 farms in Port Alberni and there are 3 left. The Fraser Valley has an abundance of greenhouses with over 75 million invested. When I look at Vancouver Island, I see we have more land mass, better weather than the Fraser Valley. What would it take to see more greenhouses on Vancouver Island growing quality products here and supplying the island and lower mainland? The answer is by providing cheaper, more efficient energy products, including natural gas, solar, wind power, or any other. See, science is changing so fast, so there could be many others too. There are many trucks returning empty to the lower mainland. Why not fill them with island-produced products, food products? This would not only feed our people, but create new jobs and good jobs. There are many other sustainable ways to grow food commercially, which needs to be explored. It was just a small thing in the paper, just on Sunday. This is about market food, and it was in the local paper. It's in the people's are interested in this now. It's a growing industry, and having more commercial here with more jobs would be what I would be interested in. So I have any questions, please.
Councillor Beil.
Thank you very much through the chair to Councillor Martin. I thank you for bringing this forward, but I will say particularly with the amendment, when I first looked at it, I did have some concern and question why this was coming from Parksville. My understanding only that we don't, to the best of my knowledge, we do not have any commercial agriculture within our city limits. Also, my understanding is that when something goes forward to ABICC with the hopes of it going on beyond that, the community or the individuals as well, that the community that endorses it or supports this motion and brings it forward would be the one to present and defend, if you like. So I really appreciate your amendment, and with that, I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Through the chair to the presenter of this one. Thank you so much for the amendment. You know, as it was first written with LNG and hydraulic fracturing, I think as we look at climate change, we want to really reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we use, greenhouse gases produced. So with that amendment, I can support it. And as a bit of a segue from where the mayor has just returned from Hawaii, Hawaii, as the most remote chain of islands in the world, they are trying to work towards being food independent as well, because they also rely on a lot of freight to feed them for their food. And so I looked it up, but by 2030, they're looking towards a Hawaii that will have 30% locally grown food. And so it'll be a bit of a slow pace, but if we can keep pushing that percentage for food independence, especially when we think of, emergency management, for water, we'll probably be okay. For kind of shelter, we live in a fairly moderate climate, but for food, if there's only 3 or 4 days left in the grocery store, and we did see some shelves that were empty in the last couple of years, I think this is a critical thing that the island and ABICC could take care of, and push a little bit further for that percentage of food independence. So thank you very much for bringing it forward.
Other comments? Thank you. And I will also echo Councillor Wood, speaking of the Hawaii situation. They don't have to use a lot of energy for heating. They have the most efficient solar generator that I've seen. So, and it seems to be environmentally safe and as long as you have sunscreen on. But the thing is that that's what Hawaii is doing anyways to try and get there. And they've actually taken down the sugarcane plantings and so forth. And one of it was environmental concern because of course, part of the sugarcane production was burning it off anyways to in between crops, which was hugely damaging to the environment. They have since replaced, they have new farms replacing with lime trees, as well as avocado. But once again, they don't have to worry about energy considerations. It's just water and sun is what they're using to grow. So I do appreciate that. I echo Councillor Beil's comments that I would expect a motion like this to come from an area that has, like in the Port Alberni area, that has actually commercial farmers in. When I saw it, I thought, in my head, I'm trying to think of somebody that we have such very few ALR lands within our city boundaries. But I think in the spirit of providing food security for Vancouver Island, I think it's a good motion and I will definitely be supporting it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Call the question. All those in favor? That carries unanimous.
Thank you.
You realize that now that you will be defending this at the AVICC. Good for you. Yeah, it all comes with a package. Second here, I should have Councillor. Here we are. Councillor Gaur, could you please introduce your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. So my motion is endorsement of resolution regarding planning tools for habitat protection for the AVICC convention. The recommendation is that Council of the City of Parksville endorse the following resolution for submission to AVICC for consideration at the 2023 annual convention. Whereas Vancouver Island communities are facing loss of irreplaceable natural habitat that is crucial to the survival of delicate coastal and land ecosystems, including wildlife and plant life. And whereas in December 2022, the 15th Conference of Parties, also known as COP15, to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, adopted the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, including 4 goals and 23 targets for achievement by 2030. Therefore, be it resolved that the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities request the provincial government establish a working committee with local government representation to establish a comprehensive set of urban planning and development guidelines that align with the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework's goals and targets and recommendations to implement this framework to regulate development at the local level in AVICC member communities and combat the loss of natural habitat on Vancouver Island. And a slight amendment to this wording is with a goal of protecting 30% of our land and coastline, which is again in line with the COP15. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have this is moved by Councillor Gaur. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Moved by Councillor Wood. Discussion, please. You get first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just to introduce why it's important for a local effort at protecting our natural environment. I would just want to read a little blurb that I've written about this resolution. Parksville is part of the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere region, which has been officially designated as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve in 2000. These biosphere reserves are considered model regions for sustainable development. They work to promote the conservation of biological and cultural diversity in addition to economic and social development. In each biosphere reserve, community partners work together to find innovative ways to achieve a balance between the needs of humans and nature. Vancouver Island is home to ecologically valuable habitat that is home to a wide variety of flora and fauna. These delicate ecosystems are at serious risk from climate change and from infringement by human development. In fact, the planet is experiencing its largest loss of life since the dinosaurs. As a regulator of development and urban planning at the local level, the local governments can play a key role in protecting the environmental habitat from the impacts of human activity. At the COP15, to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity in December, the GBF was adopted, the Global Biodiversity Framework, including 4 goals and 23 targets for achievement by 2030. The agreement includes protecting the rights of Indigenous peoples, protecting 30% of land and oceans by 2030, also called the 30 by 30, and 22 other targets intended to reduce biodiversity loss. It was identified that these goals can only be achieved through international, national, and regional collaborations, hence this resolution before this council. The AVICC has a unique opportunity to develop templates for urban planning tools such as OCP bylaws, zoning bylaws, including DPAs, and building bylaws that would assist AVICC member communities in guiding development in a sustainable manner that aligns with this framework. The development of this set of tools could be beneficial to communities undertaking the review of their OCP or zoning bylaws by providing a roadmap to sustainable development regulations. Furthermore, if all AVICC members ultimately adopted this set of tools, it would help standardize development regulations across the region, making the process simpler for local governments and developers, and thus providing economic benefit from streamlined and standardized processes. I would like to end this by reading a quote from the UN Under Secretary General and UN Environmental Program Executive Director. Nature and biodiversity is dying the death of a billion cuts, and humanity is paying the price for betraying its closest friend. We are committing suicide by proxy. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councillor Grenz.
Through the mayor to council, I'd like to thank Councillor Gaur for bringing this motion forward. It seems to me that any opportunity for local governments to get additional guidelines around good governance on any topic is a helpful thing. Being new to this council role, I find it helpful to get these sort of guides that help us understand how we can implement policy that's going to help. And having best practices that are provided from this sort of body would be helpful, not just for this issue, but for a number of issues that come before members of council and local municipalities. Thank you.
I'll weigh in here at this point. I understand the biodiversity issue and so forth, and I've watched a lot of videos over this last weekend, particularly the Kunming Montreal Global Framework, the recent one that was just carried forth. I am concerned with the wording. The wording to me seems rather ambiguous as to what we at the local level, at the government level, even we at the AVICC level, have the capacity of doing it. And I have a number of concerns, not that I don't agree with the spirit of this entire convention, the UN convention. But the fact is, when I looked precisely at the 23 targets for achievement by 2030, some of the methods to get to these targets were rather alarming to me. It's doing land control issues on private land and so forth, which is not just recommendations of what they can be doing or what they can't, but as your bottom line says, to implement this framework to regulate development at the local level. And that always has a bit of a warning bell to me as well. So forth is that someone else is trying to put their standard on a municipality or a landowner or whatever to actually include their targets in mind. And I believe it has to be discussed at a much broader sense globally or in our own particular case, locally, provincially, that it has to be discussed further before we put any more regulations that are already in place. I'm pretty confident in a lot of the regulations that we have. And as municipalities, we have our own individuals, of course, with our OCP. And I'm pretty proud, to be quite frank, of our local Parksville OCP that we have in place, that it does a lot to protect biodiversity and so forth in itself. So, and with the goal of protecting 30% of natural environment and coastline, it's like, how is that gauged? How is that including all 30% of Vancouver Island? Is that private mass? Is that government? Is that crown land and so forth? So that is my concern. And the other recommendations, they were over the top with, they actually said they wanted rich countries to contribute $23 billion to poor countries to make sure that they had biodiversity built into their planning guides. And when I hear statements like that, it's rather alarming because there's so many other factors at play. So I agree with the nature of it, and I understand, Greenpeace. I know Greenpeace from past history, and I understand, but I just don't think that this is the right place for this at the AVICC. That is my own opinion. That is why I will not be supporting it. Thank you. Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And pardon me. I do want to support this this motion. And first of all, I had to read it many times to, make sure I've got a sense of this. But I note that truly the ask is that should this be endorsed and should it move forward, is that working with the provincial government, that a working committee would be established, and that the wording is also such that to work on developing this set of tools, et cetera, guidelines that would align with. So for me, that makes that kind of addresses in my mind some of the concerns that you've raised here, because a working committee is in fact a working committee and may find that some things don't fit with the British Columbia reality or with what we have here on the island. Align with does not mean a full on take that set and apply it literally in this setting. So for those reasons, and I understand that this is perhaps a lofty goal, but again, going back to the reality of the ask is that we'd have a working committee at a provincial level, and that we would actually be invited to be a part of that in terms of representation. And that would align with those targets. I don't have a problem with that, with really thinking about what that would look like. And I understand as well that this would take obviously some time to move forward, and it is dependent on the will of the communities on Vancouver Island, whether or not this moves forward. And then at that point, whether or not it would go to the UBC and receive support. So for those reasons, I do want to support it.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Martin.
Yes, through the mayor. Do you think that the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Committee, because I'm a liaison with that, would be something that they would want to know about this, as far as what Councillor Beil is mentioning? See, that's because of our involvement in the biosphere here in Parksville. Would that be part of something like this when you think about it? I'm just putting it out there.
My comment is that would, being liaison to the biosphere, the Aerosmith biosphere, I think it would be certainly worthy for you to bring it up at the next meeting they have, to see if they can have considered this exact recommendations by this commission.
This motion.
I think that would be a good starting place dealing with locally. It would be helpful to have their comments on what they feel, because you can be sure a lot of their goals are very similar to what the goals are here. You can be sure that a lot of those goals would align. So that would be a good place to ask their opinion on what they feel of it. Yes,
Okay.
in my opinion, that's what I would think would be a good move as a liaison.
Okay.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you.
Is there any further question? or comments? Councillor Grenz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question through you to Councillor Gaur. It's possible maybe I misunderstood or misread the resolution here that you put forward in light of what the mayor's comments have been. Is the solution that's being proposed with this resolution to create recommended guidelines to arm local communities, or to recommend that local communities implement these as actual, regulations that would be prescriptive within the community?
Thank you, Mayor. Through the mayor to Councillor Grenz. I think this will all come down to the provincial guidelines and the working committee, what they come up with recommendations rather than prescriptive as being these to local governments. Does that make sense?
Any further questions, council? Thank you. I'll call the question. All in support of this motion? Opposed? Was opposed by Councillor Frass and Mayor O'Brien. Thank you. That carries. Councillor Grenz, could you please introduce your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the council. Thank you for indulging me with this last minute resolution. Originally, I intended to not bring one forward as a new councillor here and want to see what the lay of the land is, but here we are. I will read it for us. My motion is that Council of the City of Parksville endorse the following resolution for submission to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities for consideration at the 2023 annual AVICC convention. Whereas municipal taxes on homeowners are expected to increase across the province due to inflation and increased need for services. And whereas the BC Homeowner Grant Act offsets a modest amount of these increasing property taxes for BC residents using provincial revenue sources, some of which increase with inflation. Therefore, be it resolved that AVICC and UBCM request the province of British Columbia to establish a method by which eligible homeowner grant amounts are adjusted on an annual basis to account for inflation.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Wood. Second. Discussion? Councillor Grenz, you have first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to council. So it's no secret that we are living in an economic situation of high inflation, as well as higher interest costs. As a result of inflation and increased demand for services, property taxes across the province are expected to increase fairly significantly, including at the regional district level. The provincial government offers a homeowner grant that essentially uses provincial funds to help support homeowners with their property taxes. Many provincial revenue sources increase with inflation. For example, PST collected goes up. So the revenue from PST goes up along with the price of goods increasing. Meanwhile, the provincial homeowners grant tends to remain the same year after year. Last year at AVICC, a similar resolution failed, but I would like to bring this resolution back in modified form. I believe that given the changes we've seen in the economic landscape, members will see the benefit to their constituents of essentially supporting municipal budgets with revenue from the provincial government that doesn't increase year after year. If council is supportive of this proposal, I'll work with staff to provide a backgrounder based on my comments here today. And I would like to make one additional note in addition to my prepared comments, is that we've all seen in our short term here that there have been many requests for the city to provide additional services to the community. And many of these requests end up falling into provincial jurisdiction. And because we are closest to the constituents, we are the ones that they speak to about these issues. This I see as a very good mechanism for us to get increased provincial funding for municipal services that allow us to increase taxes without having the same impact economically at the end of the day on the core of our tax base, which is homeowners in our community. So I thank you for your consideration of this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Grenz. And could I also, Councillor Wood is the seconder, so he gets first go.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two comments. Perhaps we could also submit this directly to UBCM as well as ABICC. That's one idea. And thinking about it and chatting with Councillor Grenz prior to the meeting, we take in, well, the province takes in a lot of money regarding property transfer tax. And imagine if, as the hotter the real estate market is, the more revenue they're bringing in with property transfer tax, which might be fine. But with all those homes going up in value, imagine if there was some sort of percentage that when the province brings that in property transfer tax, that's equated directly to that homeowner grant act. So that way, the hotter the market is, then the more relief that homeowners get. And that might be one way, attaching to CPI might be another way, but I just thought I'd throw that in there. Thank you. I will be supporting.
Other comments? Councillor Beil.
Thank you. And through the mayor to our director of finance, if that's possible. I confess I haven't paid a lot of attention to, whether the homeowner grant changes much from year to year. I just, I make that transfer at the bank and it's done, okay? But how is it calculated at present? If our director of finance can, briefly explain that and would this make much of a difference, I guess, having it linked to inflation? Thank you.
Not being prepared for this question, but I will give you briefly how the province does calculate it. And they don't change necessarily the amount of the grant that is given, but they do change the threshold to which community or property owners can apply. So that's the number that moves each year. And I believe their goal is so that they capture 90% maybe of total residential properties have some eligibility for the grant. And the other part of it is that the grant is ground down the closer you get to those thresholds. So there's a point at which you're eligible for 100% of the grant, and above that to another threshold, you would get a decreasing percentage of that. But the actual amount of the grant doesn't change very frequently. It's been the same amount for quite a long time. So I think you could look at it both ways. I think they are trying to capture more properties being eligible for the grant by moving that threshold each year, though. So there is some effort to be made to compensate for that. However, if the total property tax bill is still growing and that amount isn't changing, your proportion of which the homeowner grant covers is reducing, right? So I think you can come at it both ways. Hope that addresses it a little bit.
The only other comment I can add to that is there's also a sliding scale when you hit 65. There's also differentiation in between the regular one as well. So that allows for those seniors as well. Councillor Gaur.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to add, since you touched on the seniors, we do have a large seniors population that is on limited income, and they are very severely impacted with inflation and the rising property taxes. I will definitely be supporting this. This is very timely, and I think a lot of our community members will appreciate what this council is talking about. Thank you.
Councillor Grenz.
If I may, Mayor O'Brien, I thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I just wanted to address Councillor Beil's question, so through to Councillor Beil, and just clarify a little bit about what the Director of Finance is speaking about. Is the reason why the province increases the top level amount that a property could still remain eligible for the grant is because we've seen such a substantial increase in the property values. And so if they didn't do that, there would not be a 93% capture of the province's homeowners. And so that's why they do this. I'd also like to add that I think we all recognize that property taxes are essentially a regressive form of taxation. And they're also in that they don't depend on your income. They depend on the value of a property that you have yet to realize. You have not sold the property, yet you're being taxed on the value in theory of what your property is. We don't do the same with cars. We don't do the same with art. We don't do the same with jewelry, but we do it with homes. And I understand this is just logistically a way to tax at the local level. But the benefit that the province provides erodes year after year. And therefore, the proportion that homeowners are paying of their taxes is increasing essentially, even if we didn't increase the taxes by much, right? So just because the dollar value is the purchasing power of that dollar value is decreasing. So that's some further clarification. Thank you for indulging me on that.
And to further echo that, Councillor Grenz is referring to the downloading of the various services of the provincial government is constantly pushing onto the municipal level, which just adds to the burden because we have to do that. And then the only way we can do that is by increasing our taxes because we have no other revenue. And that's it. So it's a very good point. So I would definitely be supporting this this resolution at this particular time. Is there any further comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Grenz. Looking forward to hearing you present at the AVICC. Bring cookies. Under notices of motion, I have a notice of motion, notice and lack of notice to put a motion to the floor right now. If I could, in lieu of notice, I would request, I would have to request for unanimous consent from council to put a notice of motion to adopt a change to our council meeting times from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And if we could entertain that, if we could at least have the discussion today. We saw what happened on the last council meeting and so forth. And we see what's happening with the staff having to go like crazy and miss meal breaks and so forth. But even what was evidenced in today anyways, our meeting time is actually 9:45 type of thing. And all of us are trying to get all of our stuff organized. And it's very difficult because our council meetings are on a Monday. And so the thing is that we've had very little time to get that all together. So it's putting a big hardship on everything, all the last minute adjustments that you did, which is all well and good. And I get that between it. But the thing is to try and capture that, you know, in between the time that the city hall opens and the time we get here. Anyways, so I would just propose that we would adopt the RDN meeting times, which is 1 p.m. And I think that we know now why they've done that. So in order to make that change happen, I would to even ask for a seconder, I would ask for your indulgence to ask if we can discuss this right at this particular time. I will call the question, is it unanimous for this to be discussed at this time? Thank you. Very good. So then if I would like to, as the introductor of the motion, to suggest that we change our council meeting times to 1 p.m. from the 10 a.m. time that we have now. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Franz. Discussion, since I moved it forward. And the reason was I kind of give it in my preamble there, but it's really tough for everybody. Here we are, it's at 10 o'clock or 9:45 with our question period. Here we are at 12 noon. We're in the 12 noon is traditionally the lunchtime type of thing. And this was a relatively small agenda we had today. And we had good discussion, and we didn't abbreviate at all. And I'm thankful for that. But at the same time, there are other times when we have more issues that require more debate and more discussion, and could easily go into the next area and run right through. And it's difficult to have a recess. That just can't, you have to run continuous, as you know. So my thoughts are is that by going to a 1 p.m. is that we have the ability to run later type of thing, but we also have more time in the morning to get all of our stuff together and be more professional as to when we sit at this table. And really the staff are go over and above to get us going. But here, as we had all experienced technological challenges today. And that might have been able to be worked out before if we had like, instead of just like getting here and then finding out that the things are working. The 1 p.m. has everybody's on staff and everybody's here, and the staff don't have to readjust. They have lives as well. So they have to readjust all their lives around a overly long council meeting. So I think it's consideration and actually would make for a better council meeting, my own personal feelings. Thank you. Councillor Fraz, you seconded. If you have any comment? No. Councillor Beil.
Thank you. Thank you for the motion. I would, I'm happy to support this, but I do have a question for staff. So through the mayor to our CAO, assuming that this change in time can be accommodated, is there a minimal amount of adjustment time before this change could take place?
CAO Kaler, if you could.
Thank you. Yes,
Answer.
if I may, through the mayor, no, we just need a resolution and we can be ready for the next meeting. It's not a huge change for us.
Follow up, Councillor Beil.
And also similarly, adequate, reasonable time to let the public know that we are shifting the time to 1 o'clock.
I don't think we need to do that in the resolution, but I see looking at our CAO, they would make sure that we had proper notice of new start time for the meetings would be done, whatever's within the charter and the governance model that we must adhere to. Thank you, Councillor Beil. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Martin.
Yes, through the mayor. I remember when we made this 10 o'clock appointment time change, we discussed the fact that it could be changed. We could try it out. And, you know, I'm supportive of whatever everyone wants to do. I can handle whatever works. I think it's, you know, it's good
Yeah.
for, we can be flexible. I really do believe that. So I'm supporting a change. That's what everyone wants.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Thank you, Council, for allowing me to bring that up. Moving on, liaison report. We will move to first on the list. Thought those Councillor Grenz had just left. We will now move into liaison reports. And in the interest of efficiency, I would ask the council members keep their updates concise. Councillor Grenz, would you like to provide your liaison report regarding the Oceanside Community Track upgrade?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to council, I'll be very brief. These school district is so I'm talking about the Oceanside Community Track project here. As you know, we're been for some time looking to upgrade the track at Bolinas. And the latest update is that the school district is doing a full facilities report, which will include the track, and this will be unveiled at the February meeting, which is coming up. So we'll be getting some additional information as to where the track is currently in terms of fundraising and how close we are to the goal. The only other thing I'll add is that the Oceanside Community Track Society is looking to expand the membership. So if there's anyone in the community who's supportive of this project, which I hope we all are, that you would consider taking out a membership in the society in order to facilitate this facility to happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Grenz. The next liaison report is Councillor Beil. Would you like to provide your liaison report regarding the Early Learning and Childcare Council of Oceanside? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will keep this extra brief. The Early Learning and Childcare Council, the ELCO, ELCCO, I attended a meeting, and everyone attending the ABICC, or actually no, going through to the UBCM, there will be a resolution brought forward by Director Salter regarding early learning and childcare in the province. I would also like to then shift to, since the Chamber of Commerce did make a presentation earlier today about Canada Day, I will leave that for now. And regarding the library board, fantastic meeting, and a new library board has been is now in place, and 21 of the members are in fact new members, and the executive has been elected. And I will leave any other further comments about the library board to a subsequent meeting when recognizing that we have very little time now.
Thank you. And back to you, Councillor Beil. Would you like to provide information regarding the leadership, communication, and conflict resolution seminar you attended?
Okay, I would just like to add that 3 of the councillors here at today's table did attend a session along with members from Qualicum Beach as well as Lansville. So it was very interesting. And much of it did have to do with relationship to WorkSafe BC regulations as well. I'm sure we've all seen those signs when we go into any public place or any restaurant or the bank, anywhere, that respectful comments are the norm, and any abusive comments, et cetera, will not be tolerated. And I've now learned that some of that is in fact response to requirements by WorkSafe BC, because one should be protected from any sort of abusive language or a situation in interaction. So anyway, it was a very good day. And as I say, again, 3 of us were able to attend from this council.
Thank you, Councillor Beil. Councillor Martin, would you like to provide your liaison report on the Oceanside Task Force on Homelessness, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping that the warming center would be open, the daytime warming center would be open during that last cold spell, but it's not actually allowed to be open until -5 temperature. So that's, I believe, something that BC Housing does with the province all around. So I called Adam Walker about it because it was really cold there for a cold spell. You weren't here, you were in Hawaii, but it was cold. Anyway, that wasn't allowed to be opened. The showers are back at the SOS and they're working out. They're Monday to Thursday, 1:15 to 3:15. So that's working out well. And there's going to be a count for homelessness, which we've mentioned before, on the 26th of April. I believe that's a provincial, it's around that week that the province does it too. So that's why ours is then. So that's being done. That's all I have to say. I also have the Downtown Business Association update.
Carry on.
I went to my first meeting on January 24th. They have a new executive director, Teresa. Their main concern still is, which is nothing new to all of us, about, because I heard about this during the campaign and I hear about it all the time about parking. And they brought this up. They've had a study done in 2011 and they want to really, for us to really look at the parking in the city, in the downtown core. And also the AGM is for everyone on the council to be invited, is March 7th at 5:30 p.m. at the Beach Club. So all councillors are invited. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Martin, do you know the new ED is Teresa? Did you get a last name?
No, not yet.
Oh,
No,
okay.
She's not starting until the 10th of February, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. So starting is February.
Yeah,
10th.
that's all that's on the website too.
We'll be able to meet her after that. Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Mayor O'Brien. And I just wondered through a question perhaps to Councillor Martin regarding your position with the Homelessness Task Force. I'm wondering if there was any talk of the coldest night of the year walk, which is coming up February 25th. And if it wasn't mentioned, that's, so I'm thinking about, it's coming very, very soon.
Right.
And in the past, and I believe that's still true, the funds that are raised for that go towards paying for an outreach worker. And I'm sure we could probably use more than one outreach worker in the community, but outreach worker funds, salaries, wages are not covered through any grants. And so it's really important to raise the funds at that coldest night of the year walk, which again takes place February 25th.
Right.
And hopefully people can be supporting that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Beil. And I believe if you can't go, I read it and I forgot to mention it. You can give a donation even if you can't go. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no new business has been identified. Special business. regarding, Councillor Fraz had made a notice of motion regarding, Phil St. Luke at the January 16th, 2023 regular meeting. Councillor Fraz provide notice he would introduce a motion regarding recognition of Phil St. Luke. This item has been referred to a closed council meeting in accordance with section 91B of the community charter. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that pursuant to the section 91A and B of the community charter, council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items regarding relating to personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, and personal information about an identifiable individual who is being considered for a municipal award or honor. I have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Gaur, seconded by Councillor Beil. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Fraz opposes. Thank you. That carries. I would like to now move into in-camera closed meeting. Thank you so much for attending, those in attendance. Let's suck it